Hello, a pleasant day, everyone. I am Phoebe Atina S. Lara from University of Rizal System Taytay from BSN 3D Group 4, and I'm going to tackle about the myocardial infarction. What is myocardial infarction? It is commonly known as a heart attack. It happens when the blood flow to a part of the heart gets blocked or clogged, often by a blood clot or fatty buildup in the arteries. Since the heart muscle needs a constant supply of oxygen rich blood, the blockage can damage or even kill the part of the heart. So, for example, or think of it as a water pipe. If the water pipe is clogged, the water can flow. So, in the same way, if an artery is clogged or there is a blockage, the blood can flow to the heart. There are also signs and symptoms of myocardial infarction that a patient can experience. First is the chest pain, that the patient can feel heaviness, stiffness, and there is also nausea and vomiting, high fever, or high temperature, diaphoresis, excessive sweating, pallor, the skin looks pale, unusual fatigue, syncope, or the patient can feel dizziness or even fainting. Then there is shortness of breath, anxiety, and dyspnea. Then here is the myocardial infarction pathophysiology. There are two risk factors. First is the modifiable factor. This increases the likelihood of plaque buildup in the arteries that can be controlled. There is smoking, which damages the blood vessel lining, promotes clotting. Hypertension. It increases shear stress on arteries, accelerating plaque formation. Then, there is high cholesterol, especially the LDL or the bad cholesterol. It deposits in vessel walls. Then diabetes mellitus. It causes endothelial dysfunction, promotes inflammation and plaque buildup. Obesity and sedentary lifestyle. Linked to hypertension, diabetes, and dyslipidemia. Unhealthy diet. High in trans fats, saturated fats, salt, sugar. Excessive alcohol. Raises blood pressure of the patient and it weakens heart muscle. Then there is also stress. It increases catecholamines, the adrenaline and cortisol, raising BP and clot risk. Then there is the non-modifiable risk or factors. These factors you cannot change or there is unchangeable. First is the age of the person or the age of the patient, such as older people have stiffer arteries, then there are more plaque accumulation. Then sex. In sex, men are higher risk for the earlier stages, and women risk rises after menopause. Genetics and family history. The myocardial infarction is inherited tendency towards high cholesterol or hypertension. Then there is ethnicity. Some groups have higher risk like South Asians. Then, over time, fatty deposits, cholesterol, or plaque pile up inside the heart blood vessels or the coronary arteries, or the atherosclerosis development. Cholesterol or plaque buildup or atherosclerosis happens inside the coronary arteries over many years. The plaque is made of lipids, calcium, inflammatory cells, and fibrous tissue. Stable plaques can cause or may cause angina or the chest pain with exertion. And then, unstable plaques with thin fibrous cups are prone to rupture, leading to MI. One of these plaques can suddenly burst, causing the blood clot to form. Or we can this is the plaque rupture and clot formation. When the plaque fibrous cup ruptures, blood is exposed to the lipid core. This triggers platelet activation and clotting cascade. A thrombus or a blood clot forms rapidly, sometimes completely blocking the artery. Then the The clot blocks blood flow in the artery. This prevents oxygen and nutrients from reaching part of the heart muscle. The blood flow is blocked or there is an ischemia. The blocked coronary artery stops oxygen and nutrient supply. Heart muscle or our myocardium becomes ischemic. If blood flow isn't restored quickly, within 20 to 40 minutes, myocardial cells begin to die. Then, within several hours, permanent infarction or tissue death occurs. Then, without oxygen, the heart muscle in that area starts to injure and die within minutes to hours. Then, the damage causes chest pain, pressure, shortness of breath, sweating, nausea, or pain spreading to the arm, neck, or jaw. These are the clinical manifestations. The ischemia and the cell death caused by symptoms of MI, such as chest pain and the shortness of breath, and the sense of impending doom or the crushing chest pain. Then this damage, and if not treated quickly, the part of the heart muscle that lost blood supply becomes permanently scarred, weakening the heart pumping ability or the myocardial set death. If there is lack of oxygen, the myocardial cells undergo necrosis or cell death. It damaged area the damaged area releases enzymes and proteins into the blood. For example, the troponin or the CKMB used for diagnosis. Dead tissue cannot contract weakened heart pumping ability. Then there is permanent damage. Without reperfusion via thrombolytics, angioplasty, or bypass surgery, the infected or the infarcted area becomes scar tissue or it is scarred. This reduces the heart's efficiency that can lead to heart failure, arrhythmias or abnormal heart rhythms, and also sudden cardiac death. Then there is also nursing interventions that we nurses can do. First is the acute phase or the emergency phase. It is the first hours after onset or after the signs and symptoms that the patient experience. First is the ABC or the airway, breathing, circulation. It ensures airway patency, administer oxygen, usually 2 to 4 liter per minute, nasal cannula if the oxygen saturation is 94%. Then cardiac monitoring, place patient on continuous ECG monitoring. Then vital signs, monitor BP, HR, oxygen saturation, and RR frequently. Then pain management, wherein MONA is the protocol, wherein we give the patient morphine for chest pain, unrelieved by nitroglycerin, then oxygen if the oxygen saturation is under 94%, then nitroglycerin sublingual unless contraindicated, for example, hypotension or RV infarction. Then aspirin, this is chewable to inhibit platelet aggregation. Then we can do IV access. Insert at least one large bore IV for beds and fluids. Prepare for reperfusion therapy. Thrombolytics if PCI not available within 90 minutes. Then percutaneous coronary intervention. Then also we have bed rest. Keep the patient at rest to reduce myocardial oxygen demand. Then we have the ongoing hospital care or when the patient is in the hospital. So the nurses can administer or there is an administration of the medication such as the antiplatelets or for example, it is aspirin, clopidogrel, and then anticoagulant. Example is heparin, enoxaparin, then beta blockers, reduce HR and oxygen demand, ACE inhibitor or our ARBs, reduce cardiac workload, prevent remodeling. Statins. It lower cholesterol or stabilize plaque or our atorvastatin, all the statins, and then monitor complications such as heart failure, crackles, edema, dyspnea, arrhythmias, palpitations, sudden cardiac arrest, and then our cardiogenic shock, wherein the patient is has low blood BP and cold clammy skin. Then assess pain and anxiety, provide reassurance and calm environment to the patient, administer analgesic as ordered. Then monitor output, strict input or intake and output assess for renal perfusion. Then for the long term, the discharge planning and the long term intervention, we have to educate the patient or patient education for their medication adherence. We have to educate them how to take the medications that they are going to take at home, such as the antiplatelets, the statins, and etc. Then there is also lifestyle modifications such as low salt, low fat diet, no smoking, then exercise as tolerated. Then stress reduction techniques, cardiac rehabilitation referral, such as supervised exercise and educational program to regain strength safely. Then look for the warning signs. Teach them when to seek emergency help. When there is chest pain, dyspnea, and palpitations, please call emergency hotlines. Then follow-up checkup or the follow-up care, regularly cardiology visits and lab monitoring. In short, nursing intervention for MI focus on stabilizing the patient for oxygenation, pain relief, cardiac monitoring, preparing for perfusion and preventing complication, and promoting recovery through education and lifestyle change. There is also medical management acute phase. For the acute phase, it is the initial or the emergency management. It is the first few minutes to hours, wherein this is what we call, or the sequence differs in practice, but the MONA. As we know this is the morphine, the oxygen, the nitroglycerin, and the aspirin. We put morphine to relieve chest pain. We give it to the patient to decrease anxiety, reduces preload and afterload, and lowers oxygen demand. Then we give oxygen to the patient given if the patient is oxygen saturation is 94% and below. And we give nitroglycerin as sublingual or IV for chest pain relief unless contraindicated, hypotension, right ventricular infarct. And also there is aspirin. It is chewable aspirin 160 to 325 milligrams as up to inhibit platelet aggregation. In practice, aspirin and oxygen are prioritized first, then nitroglycerin and morphine in pain if pain persists. Then there is reperfusion therapy, wherein that is the gold standard treatment for the myocardial infarction patients. We first is the percutaneous coronary intervention, which preferred method if available within 90 minutes of the first medical contact. Then balloon angioplasty or stent placement to restore coronary blood flow. Then fibrinolytic therapy or thrombolysis given if PCI is not available within 120 minutes, best if within 12 hours of symptoms onset. Alteplase, streptokinase, tenecteplase are the examples of the fibrinolytic therapy. Then we have adjunctive pharmacologic therapy, wherein there is antiplatelet therapy, which is dual antiplatelet therapy or DAPT, aspirin plus P2Y12 inhibitor, or the clopidogrel, ticagrelor, and prasugrel. Then there is anticoagulants, heparin, then beta blockers within 24 hours if no contraindication, reduce HR, BP, oxygen demand, and arrhythmia risk. Then there is also ACE inhibitors or the ARBs started within 24 hours, especially if EF is less than 40% and then anterior myocardial or heart failure. Then statins for high intensity, then initiated early to stabilize plaques and reduce cholesterol. Then, oh, wait. Then there is long-term medical management for myocardial infarction. For pharmacologic therapy or for the chronic management or for the chronic medications, there is the patients are usually discharged on a cardiac protective package of medications such as antiplatelets, aspirin, low dose daily, lifelong unless contraindicated. Then the clopidogrel or the P2Y12 inhibitor, clopidogrel, ticagrelor, usually for 6 to 12 months. Then beta blockers reduce heart rate, blood pressure, and myocardial oxygen demand, prevent arrhythmias. Then the ACE inhibitors, statins, aldosterone antagonists, such as spironolactone and spironolactone, eplerenone. For patients with reduced EF, less than 40% and heart failure or diabetes already in ACEI and beta blocker, and then others as needed nitrates for long and acting or for angina control. And then anticoagulants if atrial fibrillation, LV thrombus, or mechanical valves are there. Then lifestyle modification such as smoking cessation, most effective risk reduction strategy. So reduce smoking, please. Then diet for heart healthy, it is low saturated or trans fats, low sodium, high fiber, fruits and vegetables. Then we have to manage their weight and maintain healthy BMI. Exercise gradual return under cardiac rehabilitation program. Supervise safe and structured exercise that is provided by the health team or the doctors say it to the patient. Then limit alcohol intake and then stress management. So the patient should have a relaxation and counseling if needed. Then there is also cardiac rehabilitation. Multidisciplinary program including exercise, education, lifestyle counseling, and emotional support. Then there is also monitoring and follow-up. For the cardiology, we have to be regularly checked up for the ECG, blood pressure, cholesterol, and kidney function. Then medication adherence monitoring. So please always tell the patient that take their medication regularly. And then echocardiography to monitor ejection fraction or for the risk of heart failure, and then blood tests such as lipid profile, HbA1c if the patient is diabetic. Then for the last one, and if there are the medicine are not doing to the patient good, or there is no more another alternative, there this is the last resort, the device and surgical intervention, which is there is an implanted cardioverter defibrillator or ICD for the patients with severe LV dysfunction. The EF is lower than 35% to prevent sudden cardiac death. And also, there is coronary artery bypass graft or the CABG for patients with severe multivessel coronary artery disease not suitable for PCI. So, for the long-term medication, lifestyle, rehabilitation, monitoring, and advanced therapy such as ICD, CABG if indicated. Then also, we nurses are the ones who are going to tell our patients the health teaching, or we have to teach them what they are gonna do in their life or in their daily lives after they have this myocardial infarction. So first is the medication adherence. They should have they should have to take their medications or their medicine every day at the same time. Do not skip doses even if they feel okay. Then bring their meds whenever or wherever they go, and even if you feel okay, and when you visit the doctor, you have to bring your medicines. And if you forget the dose, do not double dose. Just take the next one. Then there is also diet. Eat more fruits, vegetable, fish, and whole grains. Eat less fried, fatty, salty, and sugary foods. Watch your size portion. Drink enough water. Then stress management, stay calm, avoid too much worry, practice deep breathing, meditation or prayer, do relaxing activities, and you have to enjoy that activity. And talk to your family or friends when you feel overwhelmed with your disease. Then the patient should should do the follow up care. They have to go to their doctors every appointment, have their blood pressure check, have their cholesterol check, have their sugar check regularly. Then join cardiac rehab if available, such as safe exercise and education. Then please do smoking cessation and alcohol moderation. Stop smoking completely. It greatly damages the heart, so please stop smoking. Avoid being around people who smoke also. And if you drink alcohol, keep it very small or stop entirely. Follow the doctor's order or the doctor's advice. Then, recognition of warning signs, call emergency help right away if you feel chest pain, pressure that doesn't go away, shortness of breath, dizziness, fainting, fast or irregular heartbeat, swelling in legs, or sudden weight gain. Then, the patient should exercise. Start with light activity like walking, increase slowly or as your doctor prescribes or as your doctor advises, and stop if you feel there is chest pain or shortness of breath or dizziness. You should stop whatever you are doing, and you have to stay calm. Then aim for 30 minutes a day and 5 days a week after clearance or after the doctors told you that you can exercise. In short, take your medicines, eat healthy food, manage stress, attend checkups, stop smoking, stop alcohol or limit alcohol, know the danger signs, and stay actively safe. So that's it for the myocardial infarction. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Cardiac tamponade. What is cardiac tamponade? Cardiac tamponade happens when the fluid sac around your heart fills with too much blood of other fluid and puts pressure on your heart. So cardiac tamponade is a life-threatening condition where fluid builds up in the pericardial sac, the thin covering of the heart. So this fluid puts pressure on the heart, preventing it from filling and pumping blood properly. So we have here the signs and symptoms of cardiac tamponade. So first, chest pain, anxiety, SOB, tachycardia. So Beck's triad, muffled heart sound, hypotension, and JVD. So the classic signs are called Beck's triad. So the Beck's triad, low blood pressure, distended neck veins, and muffled heart sounds. Patients may also experience chest pain, shortness of breath, rapid heartbeat, and pulsus paradoxus. which is a drop in blood pressure during inspiration. Next is the pathophysiology of cardiac tamponade. So first, there are risk factors. Some are modifiable, meaning we can control or prevent them. This includes smoking, uncontrolled hypertension, poor infection control, untreated infections, and unhealthy lifestyle habits. On the other hand, there are non-modifiable factors such as age, sex, genetics, and a history of previous cardiac surgery. Now, let's look at what happens in the body when too much fluid or blood leak into the pericardium. The sac around the heart cannot stretch quickly enough. Because of this, the extra fluid squeezes the heart from the outside. When the heart is compressed, it cannot fill properly with blood between each beat. And if the heart cannot fill, it cannot pump enough blood to the rest of the body. So this leads to low blood pressure, poor circulation, and a lack of oxygen to vital organs. At this stage, we call the condition cardiac tamponade. If left untreated, the person can go into shock and eventually die. That's why cardiac tamponade is considered a true medical emergency.
So for our nursing intervention, we have 3 types: the decreased cardiac output, yung ineffective tissue perfusion, and anxiety. Sa first one, we monitor vital signs, heart sounds, which is the muffled sound, jugular venous distension, and the pulsus paradoxus. When we say pulsus paradoxus, ito yung abnormally large drop ng systolic in our blood pressure, which is nagda-drop siya ng 10 mmHg during inspiration, na sign in a certain heart or lung condition. Next is we prepare the patient para sa emergency pericardiocentesis or the pericardial window. Also, we administer oxygen para ma-optimize yung tissue oxygenation ni patient. And last is we maintain IV access for fluid resuscitation. The next intervention is the ineffective tissue perfusion. Dito, nagmo-monitor tayo ng mental status ni patient, yung skin color, capillary refill, and urine output. We also keep the patient in a semi-Fowler's para mag-facilitate yung breathing niya. And also, we administer fluid cautiously as ordered to maintain preload until pericardiocentesis is done. And for the anxiety, pag yung patient inaatake ng anxiety, we stay with the patient and we provide reassurance. Also, minimize natin yung stimuli and ina-explain natin kay patient kung ano yung mga procedures. Next is the medical management. We have 4 medical management: the emergency measures, definitive treatment, treat underlying cause, and the monitoring and support. For the first one, the emergency measures or immediate stabilization, we have oxygen therapy. Kasi it improves tissue oxygenation. Also, IV fluids. Maging cautious tayo for the volume expansion. Kasama siya sa emergency measures kasi temporarily minemaintain niya yung preload and cardiac output hanggang sa mabigay yung definitive treatment. We also have vasopressors and or inotropes. Example nito is yung may mga INE sa huli like dopamine, dobutamine, norepinephrine, ganun. Ginagamit siya only if hypotension persists despite fluids or the bridge therapy or not definite. Next is definitive treatment, pericardiocentesis or the first line or life-saving. Meron tayong ultrasound-guided aspiration of pericardial fluid. We also provides rapid hemodynamic relief and may require catheter drainage para sa continuous removal. We also have two surgical option. Pag nagkakaroon tayo ng surgical option if yung pericardiocentesis ay nag-fail or yung tamponade request. The first option is the pericardial window or subsequoid or thoracoscopic. Inaalaw niya yung continuous drainage into the pleural or peritoneal cavity. The second one is pericardiectomy. Para siya sa recurrent loculated or malignant effusions. Next is the underlying cause. We have infectious pericarditis. Nandito yung mga antibiotics, binibigay mga antivirals or antifungals as indicated lang. And we also have malignant effusion. Ito yung mga intrapericardial chemotherapy, radiation, or yung surgical window. We also have uremic pericarditis. Ito yung dialysis. And the autoimmune causes, the corticosteroids and the immunosuppressants. We have trauma-related tamponade. Ito yung surgical repair or cardiac injury. And last one is the monitoring and support. Continuous cardiac monitoring, blood pressure, and oxygen saturation. The serial echocardiography to evaluate the pericardial fluid status. And meron tayong ICU admission para sa severe cases. Last is the health teaching. For this, we educate on symptoms for recurrence like chest pain, SOB, or shortness of breath, and dizziness. We also have here the stress importance of follow-up after pericardiocentesis or yung surgery. We also teach patient na iwasan yung mga activities na magpapataas ng chest trauma nila and encourage adherence sa medication and regular cardiac checkups.
Congestive heart failure. What is congestive heart failure? It is a long-term condition that happens when your heart can pump blood well enough to give your body a normal supply. Blood and fluids collect in your lungs and legs over time. Congestive heart failure is limiting for many. So, congestive heart failure is a condition where the heart can pump enough blood to meet the body needs. So, meron pong 8 signs and symptoms sa congestive heart failure. Yung una is SOB or shortness of breathing. So, pag hindi nagpa-pump ng maayos yung heart, yung blood, nagba-back up siya papuntang lungs, kaya nagkakos ng fluid leak sa air sacs or tinatawag nating alveoli. So, sa swelling naman is, pag merong heart failure ang isang pasyente, nagre-reduce yung kidney niya ng ability sa sodium and water. So, yung patient na may heart failure is nagre-retain ng more fluid and yung excess fluid na yon is nag-accumulate siya sa tissues na nag-lead sa swelling. So, sa cough naman is usually yung mga may heart failure na patient, ayun yung nagkakos ng accumulate in the lungs or tinatawag na pulmonary congestion na nagli-lead yun ng cough so yung fluid, na-irritates niya yung airways kaya nag-trigger yung airways natin. So, meron pang, ang isa is accumulation or yung ascites. So, ito yung nag-accumulation ng fluid sa abdominal cavity ng isang pasyente, tas nag-occur siya ng heart failure sa patient due to the heart's inability to effective pump blood. So, meron naman is, isa pa is yung weight gain. Yung sudden weight gain sa isang pasyente is typically signifies that the body is retaining excess fluid which can strain the heart and lead to the further complication. So, meron pa is ang nausea, fatigue, and irregular heartbeat. So, ang pathophysiology naman is, sa pathophysiology, ito yung nakikita natin sa diagram outline sa progression of congestive heart rate failure. Nag-i-start siya sa modified factors and non-modified risk factors. Tapos, nag-lead siya to the ultimate failure of the heart. So, number 1 is sa modified factors, merong hypertension, smoking, diabetes, high cholesterol, obesity, and sedentary lifestyle. Tapos, excessive alcohol intake at saka high sodium diet. Ito yung lifestyle and health-related factors that can be changed to reduce the risk of heart failure. Tapos, pag non-modified factors naman, is these are factors that cannot be changed. So, ang example na to is yung age, family history of heart disease, sex, and genetic predisposition. Ang progression naman nito is yung the heart muscle become weak. So, ang heart muscle natin, pagka naging weak yon, hindi siya relax. Tapos, yung next naman is because of this, the heart can't pump out enough blood to meet the body needs. So, next naman is blood start backing up. So, this leads to blood backing up into the lungs, causing shortness of breath and coughing. So, sa veins naman, nagkakause siya ng swelling ng legs and sa ankles at saka sa belly. So, sa kidney naman, the kidney sends less blood flow and try to help by keeping more salt and water. Sa fluid, retention, this extra fluid make the swelling and lung congestion worse. So the heart works harder but gets tired and weaker over time. Then the cycle repeats, leading to the chronic symptoms like fatigue, swelling, and breathing problems. Then, ito na yung nag-ultimately ng resulting ng congestive heart failure. Next naman, for nursing intervention, yung excess fluid volume. So, number 1 is monitor intake and output daily weight. So, next naman is assess for edema, lung sounds, or tinatawag natin crackles. So, next is restrict fluid and sodium intake as ordered. And lastly, administer diuretics as prescribed by the doctor. And next naman is decrease cardiac output. So, number 1 dito is monitor yung blood pressure, heart rate, rhythm, oxygen, and saturation. Then, next is provide oxygen therapy as needed. Then, pangatlo is administer prescribed medication. And lastly is place the patient in semi-poulers or high poulers to ease breathing. So, sa activity intolerance naman is number 1 is space activities with adequate rest period. Second is assist with ADLs to conserve energy. And lastly, to teach energy conservation techniques. So, sa lastly naman po is infrared gas exchange. Number 1 is monitor respiratory status like rate, depth, or effort. So, second is administer oxygen as ordered by the doctor. Then lastly is elevate head of bed.
Good day, everyone. I am Alexa Shane. Today, I am going to discuss the medical management, the pharmacologic. First-line therapy. First-line therapy involves ACE inhibitors, angiotensin receptor blockers, ARNI or angiotensin receptor neprilysin inhibitor, and beta blockers. For the adjunctive therapies, we have diuretics, SGLT2 inhibitors, hydralazine isosorbide dinitrate, and digoxin. For the advanced or other options, ivabradine, iron supplementations, and anticoagulants. The second one is the non-pharmacologic. We have 4 types. But before that, ano nga ba ang non-pharmacologic? Ang non-pharmacologic ay mga alternative na pwede natin gawin sa pasyente or sa mahal natin sa buhay na hindi nag-i-involve ng mga gamot. Una muna dyan is ang sodium and fluid restriction. From the word itself, restriction. Bantayan natin yung mga fluid intakes nila, mga kinakain nila, if mataas ba sa sodium, yun. Sa daily weight monitoring naman, pwede tayong gumamit ng timbangan sa bahay natin. Lagi natin silang timbangin if dumadagdag yung timbang nila para malaman natin kung dapat pa ba natin silang pakainin ng pakainin or dapat pa ba natin bawasan yung kanilang mga kinakain. For exercise and cardiac rehabilitation, from the word itself, exercise and cardiac rehabilitation. Kailangan, hindi porke may sakit na nga si patient, lagi lang siya nakahiga. No. We have to engage them to have exercise, kahit simpleng pag-unat-unat sa umaga, pagpapaaraw, ganon. Para yung mga buto nila or yung katawan nila is hindi lalong manghina. Para yung buto rin nila hindi humina, hindi maging marupok, kailangan din nila yung exercise. Lifestyle modification. From the word itself, lifestyle modification. Kailangan binabantayan natin yung araw-araw din nilang pamumuhay dahil nga kung nasa ospital man sila, nababantayan sila ng doktor or ng mga nurse. Pero pag nakauwi na sila or na-discharge na sila sa bahay, kailangan pa rin natin silang bantayan at tignan kung tama pa ba yung nakakain nila, yung naiinom ba nila yung gamot nila para makaka-recover agad yung katawan ng pasyente na nanggaling sa sakit. We have the device in surgical therapy. Ito yung mga bagay or mga procedure na gagawin na sa pasyente if hindi na talaga tumatalab yung mga advice na nabigay nung una, halimbawa yung mga past na na-discuss natin. We have the ICD or implantable cardioverter defibrillator, CRT or cardiac resynchronization therapy, heart valve repair or replacement, vulvoplasty and annuloplasty, LVAD or left ventricular assisting device, CBS or coronary bypass surgery, and the last one is heart transplantation. Ito nga, katulad ng mga sinabi ko kanina, ito yung mga procedures, mga device and surgical na gagawin sa pasyente if ever na hindi na talaga tumalab or hindi na kaya ng katawan ng pasyente yung mga first line na pwedeng gawin sa kanila. And lastly, we have the health teaching. Itong mga ibibigay kong health teaching na to is nabanggit na rin naman siya nung una, pero mas i-elaborate ko lang. Unang-una dyan is yung low sodium diet, fluid restriction if prescribed. Ito, madalas naman na pag nagkakasakit tayo, talagang nagbibiling yung doktor natin, yung nurse sa atin, na ganito po yung pwedeng kainin, ganito po yung mga bawal kainin, ganito po yung pwedeng inumin, ganito po yung mga bawal inumin. We should, kailangan natin yung sundin. Kasi, that's for us naman, para to gain back our nawalang energy. So, daily weight monitoring naman, report 2 kilograms in 1 day or 5 kilograms in a week. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina na kailangan tinitimbang natin sila kasi para ma-monitor din natin dito if ever na masyado tayo napaparami ng pagkain sa kanila or kulang naman yung pinapakain natin sa kanila para ma-monitor din natin ang kanilang timbang.
Next naman is medication adherence, yung diuretics, ACE inhibitors, beta blockers. Ito, mahalaga tong mainom nila kasi walang kwenta lahat ng ginawa natin nung una sa kanya if hindi naman natin na ipapainom ng tama yung gamot sa pasyente. Kailangan sundin kung ano ang gamot, kung ang ano oras iinumin, at tuwing kailan iinumin. Next one is avoid alcohol, smoking, and high-fat diet. Ito, madalas na natin siyang marinig kahit saan, kahit simple lang yung sakit mo, kahit lalo naman kung lumala na. Hindi talaga tayo pwedeng uminom ng alcohol, smoking, ganyan, high-fat diet, hindi tayo dapat masyadong malalakas sa lalo yung mga pasyenteng may ganitong sakit. Hindi talaga dapat mataba ang mga kinakain. Kailangan ang mga relatives or bantay ng pasyente is tinitignan mabuti kung anong kinakain, iniinom at ginagawa ng ating pasyente para hindi po masayang ang ating effort na alagaan sila at ang mga gamot na kanilang iniinom. Next is encourage light exercise as tolerated. Ito, may mga exercise naman na ina-advise ang mga doktor natin kung anong exercise ang dapat nilang gawin. Kasi may mga exercise kasi na masyadong severe na hindi na pwede sa kanila kasi baka mamaya atakin sila sa pusa, mapagod sila masyado. Kaya kailangan maghingi pa rin tayo ng advice sa doktor or sa physician ng isang pasyente if anong klaseng exercise ang pwede sa kanila. For the last one is teach recognition of worsening symptoms. May mga bantay kasi ang pasyente or relatives ng patient na severe na pala yung pinapakitang symptoms ng patient pero hindi nila nalalaman or hindi nila alam kasi nga wala silang idea. So dapat tayo turuan natin sila kung ano ang mga early signs or mga severe signs ng ganitong sakit para if ever man na biglang atakihin ang patient or biglang lumala yung sakit na to is hindi sila magpapanik kasi nga nagpo-promote tayo dito sa health teaching or health education na kailangan aware, kailangan alam ng patient or ng relative ng patient ang mangyayari sa ating pasyente kasi malaking tulong sa ating mga doktor, sa mga nurses ang pagiging aware ng pamilya ng pasyente. Yun lang. Thank you.